Good evening, everybody. It must be Thursday night. This is a special edition, I like to call it, of Born Political. I have a political newcomer, but we just so happen to have a young man with us today that wanted to do some interviewing, trying to learn about the process, the political process. Born Political was started because I really felt like we needed to find out who each other were. We get to the bottom of where they grew up, how they grew up, if they're a person that's making decisions in our town. At any level, I think we should know who they are. One of the people tonight is a newly appointed counselor and a good friend, I should add. So I can't wait to introduce you to him, but also the student that here tonight. We're gonna get to know them both, and a little different near the end. I'm gonna have the student ask us a couple questions and see. Hopefully they're not preloaded, but you never know. You never know what you're gonna get. So welcome to the show. I have Alistair Haglund, yeah, right, and Dan Gatewski. Dan, I'm going to start with you first. Newly appointed, not elected. I messed up when I said that. It will be newly elected in the fall because
hopefully, God willing.
I know how you're going to work.
Yeah.
So I know you pretty well, but a lot of people out here may not. So Born Political is about who you are. And who are you, Dan? Where were you born? Are you a local guy? Did you come from outer space?
So I am a lifelong Groton resident. I was born here. I was born at the hospital in New London. My parents.
You're a New London guy. I love it.
Never lived a day in my life. Well, maybe one night in the hospital when I was a newborn. But my parents moved here from Long Island in the early 90s. So we moved here. They moved here in the early 90s, and then they bought our house in Groton in 93, 94, and raised my brother and I both there. And so grew up in Groton, and my mom's a teacher in the Groton school system. She's at Charles Barnum, and my dad is started at EB as a nuclear engineer, and then moved to a company called Protopower. Yep. They ended up being bought out by Zachary Nuclear. So he now works for Zachary, and grew up in this town. And
but you're as Groton as it gets. Then.
Oh yeah, I am so Groton.
You were actually, if I remember correctly, you were Mr. Falcon.
I was
at the high school.
Yeah.
So that is about as Groton as you possibly could get. And
so, I did. I won Mr. Falcon. Oh God, you bring me back. I won. So every year, Fitch High School does a. They did. I don't know if they still do it, but they did a male beauty pageant, and it was just a stupid fundraiser. They get all these guys making fools of themselves, and I ended up winning.
Oh, I remember. I was there.
Yeah,
I witnessed it.
And Joe was actually. So the theme I did I'm going to do the candidate theme. So you had to do a school spirit video. So I did like a campaign ad, and I ended up getting Joe to endorse me.
I endorsed him,
and
it was
so fun.
I feel like I put him over the top, right? The big endorsement.
I remember the night of the show, people were just like, "Oh my gosh, it's Joe Delacruz," and I got Chris Conley too to endorse me. So it was people like, "Oh my gosh, you got Conley and Delacruz." It was funny. So then. And then my talent was I did like a convention speech, like I humbly accept your nomination to be the next.
You did a great job that night, and so like I said, you were going to be on multiple times here. I want to make sure I bring you back, but really,
I'll always come.
When I first met you, you were a being that I had not met before. Somebody as young as you were that was as interested in politics, or at least the way government worked. At least at the time, I knocked on your door. And your father had answered,
yep.
And I was getting ready to give my 2-minute speech to your dad and turn around and run away. And he said, "You don't go anywhere. You got to meet this. You got to meet my son." And when you walked down, I'm like, "Why does this kid want to meet me? He's young. Why does he care about politics?" And you really cared, and you really knew what was going on. And you challenged me with questions.
So it all started. It all started actually when I was 6 years old, and my mom. We were just driving throughout town. I had no idea where we were driving, but we were driving. And it was, these colorful things were like in the ground. And I'm like, what are those things? And they were campaign signs, and it was 2006, and that was the year Joe Courtney beat Rob Simmons by, I think
80
it was,
votes?
I think it was 87 is sticking in my head. Don't quote me on that number, but it was the campaign. It was just an influx of Now I know influx of campaign cash came in to the town and the region, and there were signs everywhere for Rob Simmons, and there were signs for Joe Courtney, and I was like, what are those things? And I'm like, I want one of those in our yard. Can we have one of those in our yard? And I'm like, the sign I was going to be in politics was an actual literal sign. It wasn't like, so, and my mom was like, oh, okay. So she ended up,
So your parents weren't super political? Or
No.
Not, they were just kind of mulling
They
about.
paid attention. They paid attention. And my mom, like they paid attention, but they weren't like active or anything.
Yeah.
And, my mom ended up, I think she went to Democratic headquarters, or she knew somebody who knew Andy Maynard, who was running for state senate at the time.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting a Joe Courtney and a state senator Andy Maynard sign on our lawn when he was running in 2006. So we had those signs, and those were the first signs on the lawn, and it was just like every election cycle, my parents were like, oh no, we have to find somebody running, like we know running.
And that's why I thought tonight's show was going to be perfect, because I said, Dan I had scheduled already.
Yeah.
And then this is my mother's neighbor.
Yeah.
Alistair, right? Alistair, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Another young person, and the more, I said I had never met anybody, but within my family, politics wasn't something that jumped out at me as something I wanted to do. It happened later in life. But to meet Dan, and now to have someone, and you're not the last one. I've started meeting. There's a lot of other people like you.
Oh no,
right? You guys are not alone.
I'm not alone, and it's really so. This brings up I'm the executive vice president of Young Democrats of New London County.
Awesome.
And it started with I ended up just getting a phone call one day from Danny Cruz, who's
over in New London.
He gives me a call. He's like, hey, do you want to start a Young Dems New London County chapter with me and Grace Carlos, who actually just got elected to state. She's now president of Young Dems Connecticut. So Grace Carlos was in Montville, Danny Cruz was in New London, I was in Groton. We all kind of got together. We pulled in Sam Sims, who's from East Lyme. He's, I think, running as an alternate for Planning and Zoning Commission over there this cycle. So it's like we're all kind of like finding our way, and we all bounce ideas off of one another. And it's like really just kind of like.
I think you'll be able to add one guy to your list.
I know. I'm hoping we can get him. I'm hoping.
Alistair, so what got you? I know you're a high school student.
Yeah.
Currently, what got you interested, or?
Well, going all the way back to 2016, my parents, we had some charts or 2015, right, or 26, right, they start the presidential primaries. And so my parents had charts for the Democratic and Republican primaries, and so we'd keep track of how many delegates Bernie won, or Trump, or Cruz, or Hillary, whoever won. And so that kind of got me started interested in politics. And then at our house, we get the Wall Street Journal. And so I would always read the finance section or the news section for fun, whatever, right? And I always noticed my dad would go to the opinion section, and I'm like, why is my dad so interested in the opinion section, right? And so I started reading it and reading Google News and all that, and just learning more and more about politics, and that got me really interested, as well as talking to my dad about politics and seeing his views. And
so are you local, or did you move here, or have you been here?
So I moved here in 2014 from Nashville.
From Nashville,
okay.
Yeah. Yep. Country capital of the world.
Yes.
Country music capital of the world. So in 14. So you came here as a young person.
Yeah.
Because you said you're 17 now.
Yeah.
So you're a younger person then, and then is your mom and dad involved in politics, or?
So not really, but my dad teaches political science, so I kind of he's like, let's avoid politics, but I'm like, let's talk about politics. So it's kind of.
It's kind of the purpose of this show in a way.
Yeah.
Because I actually think that really it's about dividing up money is what it all boils down to.
Yes.
It's a good way of putting it.
And we know how intense and how passionate that can be. People don't want to pay this, or want to pay this, or think we should do more of this. And in the end, if we just focus on what the discussions are and what we're trying to accomplish, and then knowing the players who are involved, I think it makes it a little softer. But for you now in high school, you have an opportunity to learn or to do politics. Are you into class politics, or are you?
At school we have Model United Nations. That's our only really political club at our school, but it's filled with a bunch of friends who also like politics. Maybe not as much as me, but still like politics. And we do more like international issues, but it's fun. And I took the government class, and we really have a great government teacher at our school who has a blog about, it's called Presidential Politics for America, and he writes about that, and so I love to read his blog about that.
And now townwide, then we talked off air that you obviously know who the Rob Brule is.
Yes.
But you also you went and did something with the RTM and learned about. And again, we're two different towns, but we're only one of you said seven that have RTM.
That have RTMs.
Yeah.
It's a dying breed almost.
It is a dying breed.
It's a very interesting form of.
I like it. What do you think of it when you're? I mean, the representation definitely spread throughout the town.
Yeah, so we have 5 districts in our town, and it's just sometimes I feel it's a little too cumbersome with 25 people on our RTM, and so that's pretty massive, while our Board of Selectmen is only 3 people, so it's kind of wonky in Waterford. But there's a lot of different viewpoints, and I mean, a lot of people can have input with a bigger representative town meeting or RTM.
Yeah, and voice-wise, do you see, I mean, it took me a very long time in my life to understand that you could make a change. What got me in politics was they weren't keeping score at my daughter's basketball game.
Yeah.
That's what got me involved. I was a coach. I didn't really care about politics too much. And when I got to the when I called my friend Liz.
Yep.
Liz Duarte, the godmother of Groton politics here.
Democratic politics.
Democratic.
Yeah.
She got me involved, and really it was because I called her and said, I really have to do something. There's no way. And really what I felt was that Groton town and most of the people I knew that lived and worked here were competitive enough where they wanted 12-year-olds to keep score. Like I'm not the die-hard competitive guy that cares all about winning, but I cared enough to get involved in politics. Yeah. And when I got involved and then ultimately became the chair for the RTM on the Park and Rec, and we got that to a vote and they started keeping score, I felt like, wow, you can actually change something. Like, that can actually happen. And I've seen change happen a lot.
Yeah.
And most of the change that affects you the most is locally.
Yeah.
So the people that you talk to on the RTM, even though they seem politically like they might be on the smallest part of government, they usually have the most effect on your everyday life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because the RTM passes or approves the Board of Education budget, and so that affects our schools as well as the budget directly in our town and all the services in our town and the library and all that, as opposed to, I guess, when I look at the national level, it feels like nothing ever happens, but at a local level, it's very dynamic.
And
it goes to saying all politics is local.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. And even nationally, it is local. I mean, if we just start looking at the presidential primaries right now for the Republicans, it always goes to a winner of either Iowa or New Hampshire, the first states to go.
Yeah.
And in Iowa, it's like you're still knocking doors, you're going to the coffee shop, and that's how. I mean, it's their way of life almost.
Yeah.
It is.
It is super exciting and super it's like. And now it's going to be South Carolina for but whatever, the order is going to be.
It's weird.
It's going to be weird, but it's just like it starts out local. And it's like, okay, you weed out, those states weed out for everybody else. Because it's like after, I think going back to 2008, on the Democratic side, it was, you had John Edwards, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And they ended up getting the most local fields in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. And then, Edwards was like, I think he's like, it is
kind of cruising.
He was like, you know what? It's like, this is a history moment here. We could either have the first woman or the first person of color as a nominee. He's like, I'm going to let history take its course and step out. And then obviously all his scandals happened. But
that could have been the sidestep.
yeah, that could have been the sidestep as well.
We'll
But
never know.
anyway, and then it was just, but like it was really like, Obama put a lot of effort. And Obama has it's actually a documentary. It's For the People, the election of Barack Obama, and you can see his campaign launch, and you can see his.
He did something different.
Yeah, he did something. He did his campaign launch, and then he did. I mean, just doing he had all his numbers that he just he changed the game, and it was just like his campaign team was. I call it the A-team. They're like the expert, and they're all doing.
And at your age to be that excited about talking, because even when you were mentioning to people in the primary, I'm like, oh, that's right. I forgot about Edwards.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
But
There were more.
I
mean, we had Chris, our own senator, Chris Dodd, ran in that election.
He did.
And it was just like.
I think he did.
Yeah, he did. I got you.
But so I'll stare. I as promised. I wanted to give you some time. Also, I knew you had a couple questions, and I think you asking Dan some questions maybe. I mean, you are much closer in age than you and I, and even closer than you and I too.
Yeah,
so
I know. I've known you a long time though. It's
I'm like an old man at the table.
It was a funny story. I was sitting with a fellow counselor, and I don't know if we were in a meeting or what we were doing, but it was very funny. I'm like, when I was in high school, I'm like, this is going ways back now, and she teases me. She's like, ways back? That is not a ways back, my friend.
No,
that is
not.
only 5 years ago. I'm like, it was 4 or 5 years ago, and she's like, that is not a ways back. She's like, that may be a ways back in your lifetime, but that's not a ways back in reality.
Feels like a ways back to you.
I'm like, that's what I said. I'm like, I'm 22 now, and I was 18 at the time. That was 4 years ago. I'm like, that's a ways back for me in my lifetime.
But you're 17 to 22 right now.
I mean, 4
has
years.
been a lifetime.
Yeah.
He's gone to college, graduated, so
It
a lot of things have happened. So also, I'm gonna let you ask some questions. I knew you had a couple.
So, I guess you mentioned that you were involved with the Young Democrats. What drove you to the Democratic Party versus the Republican or Green or Libertarian Party?
So it was always, I think I always was a Democrat. There was no ifs, and it was just, we were talking about this off air earlier, but it's like, Joe was saying over here that he always asks, like, where you come from, where you about, and it's like, I was a Democrat. My mom's a teacher.
Yeah.
So she's in a union. She's active in her union, and, it's like unions and public education are like they tend to go more Democrat, and because our party believes in that. And then my dad works in nuclear power, which is clean energy, so it's like he's actually unaffiliated, but that leans Democrat. And then actually, my grandfather got super interested in 2008 Democratic presidential primaries and like loved Obama. Was on the Obama train early, and it was like Obama all the way.
You got to share that with
so
your
I got to
grandfather.
share that with my
That's
grandfather,
cool.
and it was just always like and it's my whole family is just Democrat. My dad is like our unaffiliated. My dad's like, no, I'm an unaffiliated, registered unaffiliated. And he likes his.
I didn't even know I don't know if my father's Republican or Democrat. He doesn't talk about politics.
I know. It's like
he doesn't. It's not something that is in his what he wants to talk about.
I know, and it's like, and I just like, I always like, I just knew, and I was just like, this is my upbringing. Like I grew up.
I think issues drive you.
Yeah, it was totally issues.
A lot of it is based on issues, and right now, there's some big ones.
Yeah, being young and like at that time it was okay. Public education, Republicans tend to go towards charter schools and school choice.
School choice and rebates.
And then, those charter schools, they aren't union.
No, they're not.
They're not. So that was another thing. And my mom was active in her union. And, my mom's union has gotten her health insurance, a good salary.
Yeah.
So things that, that help, like.
That help you all.
That help me ultimately.
Yeah.
Like, so it was super just great, and it was just like the family was just, and then my grandmother was a nurse, and she was Democrat, and my grandfather became Democrat because he was anti-Vietnam War, so he was like
It's funny because before I think nurses could have been, and they may be leaning towards Republican now.
Yeah.
Like I think it doesn't really matter. It's less career based now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where police officers are largely Republican, where I think in the 70s and 80s they were largely Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole. It
There's
was the whole
been
union thing.
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with union and working, and now I think social issues will drive people to one side or the other. And unfortunately, like the social issues really aren't, although they're the talk of the day.
Yeah.
It's really not the nuts and bolts of what government mostly does.
But like,
Dividing up money.
Dividing up money.
But we
Yeah.
talk about back in the day. I mean, there was nothing that really defined you as a Republican or a Democrat. I mean, you think about. I mean, you're thinking about Lowell Weicker, who the former Connecticut governor, senator, and congressman. You know, he was viewed as a liberal Republican.
Yeah.
And I mean, he ended up leaving the Republican Party in the '90s because the party conservatives ended up going to the Republican Party, and liberals ended up going into the Democratic Party, and you saw, conservative Democrats going into the Republican Party, changing to the Republican Party. The name I'm thinking of right now, I don't know why it's coming, but Howard Heflin, the former senator from Alabama, and
Only you know that.
not Heflin, Shelby, Richard Shelby, who was elected as a Democrat in the '80s and then moved into the Republican Party and just recently left the Senate.
You have another question?
So I guess, do you have any siblings?
I do. I have an older brother.
Okay.
My older brother. It's really interesting because
He's a hardcore Republican. No, I'm kidding.
not one bit. So my older brother is in a PhD program for mathematics. He really likes numbers and really likes math and science, and I really like history, English, and government, and all that stuff. So it's like me and my brother, we're total polar opposites.
Okay.
And it's like we're just like personality. I remember I asked a teacher who had my brother. This was in high school. I'm like, you have my brother. He's like, are we anything alike? And he's like, I've taught siblings before. I've never met any more siblings any more different than you two. And it was just like, we're just different. We get along fine. We just have different interests. And it's like, he was into music and art, and I was into sports and athletics and just.
You have watched my show. You're asking my question.
Yeah. Well, I guess, did he give you or help you develop any political opinions?
If anything, I shaped his political opinions.
Oh,
It was like because I got into it at a very young age.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I have like all the mailers still. I have like your mailer from 2016. I still have. I probably have your. I can probably find an RTM mailer from when you were running from RTM, and they just had all the Democratic candidates on one flyer, and it's just like. I'm like, I probably had that. I definitely have a council.
And if your brother's that much into math, and a lot of those guys really could care less.
And I think my brother shaped my influences in music. I mean, my brother is an amazing saxophone player, and
cool.
I ended up doing band as well, and I think it was just like it shaped that, and it's just like, my brother he's really into cars, and he's a huge NASCAR fan.
Really?
Yeah, my brother is a huge NASCAR fan. No one does. It's
That's
like
funny.
we go to NASCAR races, and I'm like, I feel like we're the misfits just sitting in a NASCAR.
So you got a huge Democratic family, but on Sundays NASCAR's on the TV. See,
there was a fight when we were younger because I would want to watch football. I would want to watch football, and he would. It'd be like, so it was really interesting in our household. It'd be like, it's like, and my brother's like, it would go from football, and then it'd be like, all right, now it's baseball season. And it's like, and my brother, I remember it was one time, he's like, can NASCAR just be the season, like just a month? Can NASCAR be the highlight in our house? And it's like, it was February and March became NASCAR months.
It's hard to watch.
He loves it.
I understand. I think in person is probably cool, but it's hard. I think Philly would be hard to watch.
He got into the tire, we went to New Hampshire Motor Speedway up in New Hampshire, and we ended up getting, we ended up going down on the track, and he ended up running into crew chief, and he was asking all the crews for the cars about tire pressure and track bar adjustments, and I'm like, what the? I'm like, I have no idea what
Because there's a lot of math involved.
Yeah, it was a lot of math involved. So
tons of math involved.
Part of me thinks he likes it. So why he likes it? I mean, so it's like
we're getting close to being out of time. I told you this would be fast.
Yeah.
It's less than 5 minutes, so I'm going to give you another chance to ask another question.
Could I ask a question to you?
Absolutely.
So I guess, When did you decide that you wanted to run for representative in the General Assembly of
The
Connecticut?
representative was a big jump because it really wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
It seems like everything I did in my career wasn't part of a plan.
No.
But just as things piled up, it kind of put me in a spot where a lot of it had to do with the opiate crisis at the time. My son was someone that was that fell to it, was
Yeah.
addicted to Percocets, and I just felt like the state wasn't doing enough, or the money wasn't getting directed the right way. And for someone that worked full time at the time, it's very difficult to walk into your boss's office and tell him that, hey, I'm thinking of running for state representative.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to say lied to, but I think everyone that's running, when you go to Hartford and ask them how much time it takes, they always are on the shy side. They don't
Yeah.
tell you that you'll be there almost every single night.
Yeah.
Or at least, even when you're home, you're at all the meetings. And I think people that, like myself or like you, that get involved, you love your community,
Yeah.
and you're willing to put the work in. So you go ahead and jump in with 2 feet.
Yeah.
And I did that, and it was one of the greatest, best experiences of my life. Any step I've ever been at, I started at RTM, which we call, for all intents and purposes, probably the closest to the people.
Yeah.
Because it was my neighborhood that I was representing. But when you get there, you're like, wow, my neighborhood trusts me that I'm going to make the right decision for my neighborhood. And when I got elected to council, you say, wow, 40,000 people. 40,000 people.
No,
it's overwhelming.
You've mentioned this to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when you got to the state, it was like for 2 to 3 million.
Yeah, it's 2 to 3 million people.
Population, and it's
You're making decisions.
you're making decisions for that. And I remember it was my first vote a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I thought back to that line. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am making decisions for roughly
40,000.
40,000 people.
It's pretty-
Like, that is what my vote is going towards.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
It is a huge responsibility. And it's like, part of me was like, I had to like stop for a second. I was like, whoa.
It's humbling. It's
No, it
humbling.
was humbling. It was really
I'm
like,
going to let you say one more thing here. We are running out.
How much influence in the General Assembly, like if you say, I want to direct more funding to to help fix the opioid crisis, could you really make a big change, or would you need to gather the support of your Democratic caucus?
There's 150 some
Yeah.
odd members. It happened to be that was the top item, and and a lot of people have been affected by it. So people wanted to put money there.
Yeah.
And what in government, you can get a group of people that are willing to throw the money into a
Yeah.
pot. It really comes down to putting it in the right place.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure I can do that. And I will tell you, there's freshmen that go up there that can impact the legislature that day, that minute. If they have something they came to bring, and it's important to everybody, they can make that happen. And that's kind of shocked me, because I felt like when I went up there, I was like, okay, Joe, sit in the corner.
Yeah.
And we really, we're gonna not talk to you as much.
Yeah.
We came in with a very close vote count,
Yeah.
so they were forced to listen to me.
Yeah.
Because everything mattered and the votes were so close. But in the end, if you're honest and you're heartfelt and that you're really trying to do something positive, your colleagues will listen to you, and you can get almost anything done.
yeah, it's building coalitions. You have to build coalitions, and it's
like anything.
Yeah, you gotta get a majority vote. If you don't have a majority vote, it's not getting done. You
And
just-
with that,
pull it in.
we are just about out of time here. This is Born Political. Again, Dan, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having
This will
me.
100% not be
Thank
your
you.
last time.
Thank you.
Also, you'll always be welcome back too.
Thank you.
We'll continue this conversation. I'm Joe Delacruz. This is Born Political. When people tell me that they're worried about the future, I'm less worried, because I meet folks like this every single day. This is the next generation, and they're not just excited about their community. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and get work done, and that's what these two are going to do here. Great to have you guys on the show, and we'll see you next time.